a couple weeks ago in our Facebook group, somebody asked a question of, as a freelance producer, how do you keep your books clear and organized while still being completely booked? They were running into the issue where they were only working on one production at a time, and especially when you work remote, one production could take 2, 3, even 4 weeks of going back and forth. And if you're only booking one thing at a time, it's hard to pay your bills off of one production fee a month. So in this video today, what I want to do is I want to cover my biggest tip and the biggest secret for if you're a freelance producer and you're trying to keep your books full and your bank full while not overwhelming yourself and having too many things happening. So in this video, we're going to talk about project management. We're going to talk about having multiple projects going on at one time, but still being organized and still having focus on each individual client. And then we're also just going to talk about some of my tips and secrets and tricks, and I'll give you some templates that you can use so you can keep your books full without keeping yourself super overwhelmed and overbooked. So we're going to talk about all of that, but my name's Austin. You're watching Make Pop Music. We have weekly tutorials here. If you like this tutorial, please make sure you subscribe, comment down below any videos that you want to see, and then if you want to support the channel, head over to makepopmusic.com after the video. You can check out all of our sample packs, preset packs, MIDI packs. We have a start to finish production course, but we don't have any businessy stuff like this. So this is not a video that will lead into some kind of sales funnel or, template or anything like that. This is just all free content for you. So let's go ahead and dive in and start talking about how I keep projects clear and organized and booked. The first thing that I think we need to talk about when you're being a freelancer is always having multiple projects happening at the same time. This is especially important if you work remote. So I, have built most of my career working remote. I've worked with over hundreds, if not thousands of artists at this point. I've made well over 6 figures for most of the years of my career, and all of that has been remote. So when you're working remote, it's really easy for you to think, oh, well, I've got a production coming in, so I'm good for that week. I've got a mix coming in, so I'm good for that week. I've got this coming in for that week. But the thing is, when you work remote, you're not just doing 8-hour, 9-hour blocks of working on a production. So let me pull something up for you. And this is just kind of a little template I have. This is just a mock one. I'm not giving away real client names or rates or anything like that. But this is basically what a week or, an open project book of mine will look like. So let's just kind of run through what this is. So I kind of color coordinate everything, and I like to have multiple things going at once because every artist will kind of be at a different point, right? So let's just say I'm working with a guy named John. He hired me for a production, mix, and master. And then I'll kind of write where we're at in that project so I can make sure that everybody knows, where they're at. I make sure that I'm not missing people's revisions. I make sure that I'm not, waiting too long on files without checking in. So I'll always put where we are, and then I'll put the project rate, what they still owe, and then I'll put a start date and I'll put a deadline. And then last, I'll just put waiting. So am I waiting on revisions from them? Am I waiting on stems from them? Are they waiting on something from me? And so I'll organize every project like that. So let's just run through this real quick. Let's say we have a guy named John. He hired us for a full production, and right now we're revising the final master. Once we revise that final master, we'll get to send that last invoice for $1,500. So we've got that there. We've got a guy named Zach. He hired us for the same exact thing, but for Zach, we're waiting on his vocal stem. So there's not really much that I can do right now. This is a really good example of when you're working remote. If you don't have multiple projects in the pipeline, you are literally just a sitting duck when you start waiting on clients or on artists to send you things or get back to you with revisions or get back to you with stems. So keep in mind, we'll kind of look at what a week at a glance looks like for me and how I block out time. But keep in mind that, just because somebody paid me $3,000 to do a production does not mean that I'm going to be inside of their production all day, every single day, only working on that. Because if they're not here, I'm only doing things in a couple hour blocks, so I'll do the production, send that, get their feedback. I have to wait for their feedback, so while I'm doing that, I can do something else for somebody else. So as long as you can get people in your books, you should be working on as many things as possible. I would say be weary about maybe having more than 10 or 12 going on at one time, because then it does get a little bit complicated to kind of keep everybody organized and keep things in line and kind of stay up with deadlines. But, if you work remote, you should easily be able to have between 5 and 8 things happening without you getting overwhelmed or without you getting disorganized or anything like that. So we've got a full production for John that's almost done, just needs a last little revision. We've got a full production for Zach where I'm just waiting on Zach. We had a full production for Vanessa who's actually completely finished. I just have to send final files and invoice. We have somebody named Jade who we are also producing, and that's kind of more in the production process. So this is where I'm, working on something, sending a draft, get their opinion, bring it back, work on something, send a draft, get their opinion, bring it back, work on something, etc. This can get dragged out over 3 or 4 days, but each day it's not a ton of time. It's like an hour here, an hour and a half there, an hour here. It's not like 9 hours of me producing something for them. So we've got Jade working. We've got a mix for somebody named Joey. A mix is typically only like a 3-day project for me. Typically it only takes like 3 hours and it's just revising from there. So you'll see that this one has a much shorter turnaround time. We did a week. So that would be like the absolute max for our mix. And then we have somebody named Brad, who is a full production but hasn't been started yet. We have somebody named Cody, who's a full production, but they're actually going to come record in person. So I'll kind of show you how different that is. And then we've got somebody named Katie, who has signed the contract and delivered the invoice, but we haven't even really started. So we have to hop on some kind of creative call with them to start talking about things like, what do you want in your production? I can give them some of my ideas so we can get on the same page before we start diving in. And so this is typically what my open projects will look like. So, you know, if somebody wants to book something, I would just kind of look at my next available week. So I've got something starting the week of June 2nd. I could probably start one more thing that week. And then if somebody else wants to book, we're going to move to the next week. So I'll book 2 things for the week of, June 9th. And then we can book 2 things for the week of, June 16th. So I typically don't try to book more than 2 new things per week, unless I've started wrapping up other things, because again, you don't want this to just keep piling and piling and piling. So I'll always try to have anywhere between 5 and 10 projects happening. And then, once I finish one, I'll pull in another one. Once I finish that, I'll pull in another one. And it kind of just cycles. This is a good way for me to keep, anywhere between $15,000 and $20,000 on my books at one given time, without always being super overwhelmed. I know that this looks like a lot, but let's go ahead and look at my week at a glance. Here's a quick little rundown of what my week would look like if I took all of those projects and started breaking them up. So every single week, I'm gonna break this down into like a weekly to-do of just general shit that I have to get done. So I do need to revise John mix. I do need to check in with Zach and see if he can send those vocal stems. I need to go ahead and finalize Vanessa. I need to send an update to Jade. I need to finalize Joey's mix. We got to start Brad's production. We got to have Cody's session, and we need to hop on a call with Katie sometime this week. So then we can start her the next week. And then other than that, I have the make pop music tutorials and reels and shit like that. You may not have this. That's a whole different video that we can get into of, if you're trying to keep your books full, what can you do to actually bring people in the door? So if y'all want to see a video on like how to actually start getting more leads and more paid clients and more collaboration offers, let us know, because we can easily do that. But let's go ahead and let's just break this down day by day. So we've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm basically in the studio Monday through Friday, like 10 to 5, 10 to 6. So I try not to work more than that. If I start working more than that, I get grumpy, I get tired, I get, unmotivated. So this is kind of my sweet spot. Everybody's going to have something a little bit different. So on Monday, I'll always start Monday mornings with like doing admin work, checking emails, downloading files, sending little message updates to people. And then other than that, doing things like setting up this kind of calendar. And then typically what I'll try to do is knock out the really quick stuff before lunch. So like a mix revision to me only takes anywhere between maybe 20 and 40 minutes, depending on how much we need to revise. And so I'm just going to knock out that mix revision so I can send that to John. And the reason that I'm going to do that so early in the day is because maybe John can get back to me by lunch or after lunch, and I can do even another revision really quick. And this is how, you can send a couple updates within one day, and within one day you could finalize a song. Like, it really doesn't take that long once you kind of get into the workflow. So we're going to revise John pretty early, and then we're going to go ahead and send Vanessa's final files and invoices. This won't even take an hour. This is just like printing the stems, printing the multi-tracks, printing the instrumental, sending the invoice, and then just like wrapping everything up. And once that's done, Vanessa is done. We're done with her. Then we'll take our lunch at like 1. Typically I take anywhere between like 30 minutes and an hour, just depending on how my day is looking. If I'm super busy, maybe I only do like a 30-minute lunch. If I kind of have time to chill, I'll take something like an hour. After lunch, what I'll do is I'll just take a little bit of time to kind of do a little bit more admin work, see if I have any emails that need to be returned. This is where I would do something like check in with Zach. So send him a message and say, hey, let me know if you're going to be able to send those stems this week. That way I can slide you into my schedule, because when you're working remote, you have your timeline and the artist has their timeline. But if you can kind of both get at least on the same page, where you can kind of realize, okay, they're going to send their stems on Monday, so then maybe on Wednesday I can do it, or maybe they're sending it on Thursday, so maybe Friday I could do it. You don't want to leave open time. So you'll see later here, we have time allotted for Zach's vocal edits and mixes. But if he doesn't have them by then, I'm going to slide him out and I'm going to slide somebody else in or move somebody else ahead. And so that's a really good way when you're working remote to just kind of be as flexible as possible. That's why it's really important to have multiple things happening at one time, because if you don't have multiple things happening at one time and somebody doesn't send you these stems, now you're kind of fucked, right? You're just kind of sitting there with no work to do, no money coming in. So we're going to check in with Zach, see what he's looking like. Then I'm going to take the next 2 hours to do a production update for our client, Jade. Typically when I'm working on productions, especially remote, if I'm working alone, I try not to work in more than like 3-hour blocks, because if I'm on the same project for more than like 3 hours, I start to lose objectivity. I start to, get into the weeds a little bit. I start overthinking everything. And then other than that, it can just get really messy really quickly. And there's really no need, right? Like I can do an insane amount of work in 2 or 3 hours where I can send that to the client, get their update. And I kind of am very open with artists that I work with. And I kind of say, don't think of every update as like this big transformative update. We're going to be working in small batches, but it's back and forth almost every day. So we try to keep the ball rolling and keep the production moving. But with that said, I'm not sitting there for hours and hours and hours on every single project every single day. So we'll work on Jade for a couple hours. At 4, we'll kind of film a little reel, edit that, and post it to make pop music. That takes 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the reel. And then let's just say at 5, we want to go ahead and have our call with Katie. That way we can get that production vision set. That way, if something like, Cody cancels a session on Thursday or Zach doesn't send his stuff, we can just slide Katie into one of these spots. So on Mondays, I'll always try to set my week up. I'll always try to do any revisions that came in at the end of last week or over the weekend just to get those done. And then I'll start to kind of build up things that I'm going to want to be back and forth with for the rest of the week for artists. And let's move on to something like Tuesday. This is where I'm going to do my admin work in the morning. So emails, any kind of brand deals, anything like that. Then on Tuesdays, I'll typically like organize and set up the Make Pop Music video. So I'll write, the layout or the script, or organize the session that we're going to be going over, or figure out what exactly we want to highlight in something. So I'll always do that on Tuesdays, and then we'll just film and edit another reel. So before lunch, it's just admin work and Make Pop Music stuff. But if you don't have something like this and you don't even need to worry about that, and then at 1:30 after lunch, we'll finalize Joey's mix, because we don't have to do too much. It's just like a last little bit of a revision, send that off, and hopefully Joey can approve it. So then the next day we can send final files and invoices. And then from 2 to basically 5, so 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, we're going to be working on Brad's production. Typically for the first time I'm doing a production and like diving in for the initial draft, I'll probably spend that 3 hours on it, because this gives me a chance to, build something out through the verse and through the chorus, send that over, and at least get their feedback on it. That way, if we're on the right track, I've put in a good amount of work where we can kind of build it out. But if we're not necessarily on the right track, it's only 3 hours. It's not make or break. I can go back and I can easily, revise anything, change anything, try something completely different. That's why I'll never spend more than 3 hours on a first draft, because if I'm doing that, I put myself at risk for sending something that maybe we're not on the same page with. And then if I lose 8 hours of work, I'm going to be pissed off. If I lose 3 hours of work, it is what it is. It happens. It's like not that big of a deal. That's why I block things out in couple hour chunks. And then after that, we'll revise John's mix from the day before if he has another revision. If he doesn't have another revision, this just gets open for whatever. Maybe I finish the day early. Maybe I, start prepping for the next day. It doesn't matter. A lot of the time, I'm actually out of the studio by 5. I just have this for extra shit if I need it. Then let's go into a Wednesday for me. Those days look a little different because I have to film all of these Make Pop Music videos. Like right now, it's a Wednesday. This video will come out this Friday. So for me, I'm going to film this video. I'll probably be done with this video by like 11:30. Then I'm going to edit the thumbnail. Then I'm going to edit the reel. And then I'll probably just go ahead and take lunch, because I don't want to start other creative projects if then I'm going to have to end those in like 30 or 45 minutes. So I'll finish all the Make Pop Music stuff, take my lunch, and then I'll be in client mode for the rest of the day. So we're going to go ahead and send final files and invoices to Joey so we can finish that up, get some money in the door. Joey's good to go. And then we're going to work on Jade's production again for about an hour. See if we want to, add anything, do a revision, update, maybe structure it out a little bit more. And then this got color coordinated wrong, but we can actually work on Brad's production again for like another hour. See if we want to build that out. That way Thursday he can kind of sit with it and get back to me so we can work on it more on Friday. And then we're going to leave this open for any updates or revisions that we have. Maybe we need to revise John again. Maybe we need to, do another revision for Joey. Maybe Jade had another idea she wants us to slide in. So I'll leave the, 4 to 5 open, and then we're going to prep for the next day. So I'll get a template pulled up for the in-person session. I'll make sure that the studio is pretty clean. I'll make sure that, all my mics and everything are working, and then we're good to go. That's my Wednesday. Now let's take a look at Thursday. I wanted to slide this in there because I don't do these often, but when I do, it's a completely different workflow. So you can see right here, we have an 8-hour block for a session for Cody. And when I'm doing in-person sessions, you have to be ready because they're so different, right? Like you can't multitask. I can't work on Brad and John and Joey and Jade, and I can't do a bunch of admin work. But what you can do is basically finish that entire song that would get spread out over 2 weeks. You can finish that in one day. So typically when I'm doing an in-person session, in like an 8-hour session, we're going to write a quick little demo, write the top line, produce the song out, track the vocals, and do a pre-mix. And so by the time that artist leaves, all I really need to do is go in and do final edits, do a final little mix and master, and then we're good to go. So I'm basically going to only dedicate this day to Cody. Maybe I'll send a couple emails in between sessions or in between, little breaks. But other than that, we're basically going to produce this song start to finish on Thursday. I'm not going to worry about anything else. Now, I know that might seem stressful, but if we go back and look at this, you can see that Cody's rate was $2,200. We're going to be able to make that in one day, right? So we're going to leave all the day for Cody. And then on Friday, I have to post the videos at 10 a.m. Eastern time every single Friday. Then I'm going to do admin work for the rest. And then this is where I'll leave a couple hours open. So the session the day before, maybe I want to do a mix. Maybe I want to do some edits. Maybe I want to throw a couple things in there. But that way by lunch on Friday, Cody's done. Like we might have to revise a couple small things. But when you work with somebody in person, the revisions are almost non-existent because they were there for the entire creation process. So by lunch, Cody's completely done. He was like a 1.5 day project. He's out of there. Now, after lunch, this is where I've left time for Zach. So if Zach sends his vocals this week, this is where I'm going to do vocal edits. And this is where I'll do his mix and start finalizing his production. If he hasn't gotten back to me, I can slide literally anybody else in. I can move Brad up and work on Brad's productions, and then I can end the day with Katie. I can move Brad up and then take, a half day basically. I can start prepping the video for the next week. So keep in mind that if you have things that are, dependent on whether an artist or a client gets back to you, be pretty flexible with that, because if you're not, you're going to be frustrated because you start losing time. And when you lose time, you lose money. That's why I like to have something like, 5 to 8 projects going on. So I'm never just sitting there if I don't want to be. So that is basically my entire workflow of how I keep tons of projects happening at one time. And again, this is going to be a little bit different for everybody. Everybody's got different workflows. Everybody's got different things that they do. But one thing that I will say is just kind of figure out what works for you. Everybody's a little bit different. People work on different projects. People have different rates. People have different availabilities. So figure out what yours is and figure out how you want to fill that out and incorporate it. I will be leaving links for the templates for like the project management and the weekly calendar. And if you want to use them, you totally can. However, I will say, it only takes like 10 or 15 minutes to set up your own template. It takes years to figure out what you want your template to be. So while you're definitely free to use mine, I also really implore you to sit back, take a look at your own workflow, take a look at what your own day looks like, and figure out something that works specifically for you. Because once you do, it's really easy for you to just sit down for 20 minutes every single Monday, fill that out for the week, and then now you're organized. Clients aren't missing stuff. You're not missing stuff. You're not missing invoices, contracts, deadlines, etc. So keep all of that in mind. This is something that is absolutely essential if you're a freelance producer. You cannot afford to only have 1 or 2 projects happening at a time because projects get dragged out over months. Like I've had projects that I waited on the artist for almost a year. And to be honest, that's not okay. I always have to step in and send invoices and late payments and stuff like that. However, if I waited until that project was done to book another one, I'd be broke. So keep that in mind when you're working on projects. Keep yourself in mind, and then just find that balance where you're not working on too many things and scattering yourself too much where you can't put in 100% effort, But keep in mind, 100% effort doesn't mean 100% of your time all the time. But that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully this helped you kind of keep in mind your project management and just kind of see what a week in the life of a producer who is doing this full time and is completely independent looks like. So hopefully this helped. Let us know in the comments down below what videos you want to see in the near future, or if you have any questions or concerns. And then other than that, make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe to our channel. And if you want to support us, you can head over to makepopmusic.com. We have sample packs, preset packs, MIDI packs. We do have a start to finish production course where we do kind of touch on like writing contracts and invoices and handling projects. And then we also have a ton of free content over there. So free samples, free presets, free little infographics. Go check it out, makepopmusic.com. But that's going to be it for this video this week. We'll see you guys next week with much more content. Much love, everyone. Peace.